Coros or Garmin? If you're looking to get a sport watch, that's a question you've heard and asked yourself 1,000 times. Well, today I want to help you there. I want to help you choose between Coros or Garmin, providing you unbiased information, doing a head-to-head comparison so that you can make an informed decision. So what I did is I did a head-to-head comparison wearing both watch during Cocodona 250 mile, during Bryce Canyon 100 mile, and in some training run, so I could see the difference of how they felt, how I could use them, how long they would last. Hi, Simon here. Welcome to my channel. I'm an experienced ultra runner with 4,100 miler under my belt. On this channel, what I do is provide inspiration but also guidance to help you have your own adventure. I don't have a lot of gear video. In fact, most of the videos you'll see here are race recap or training tip. But I felt I have a lot of experience with a lot of gear and I want to communicate that information. But look, I'm not a tech guy, I'm a trail guy. So this video is not about providing you all of the detail about the watch and the tiny spec that you could find. You can find that online on their webpage. What I want to provide today is my experience running on trail, hundreds of miles, and telling you what I honestly think about these watches. If you ask online, Coros or Garmin, you'll get a lot of answers. And most people, if they have a Coros, they will say they like the Coros. And if they have a Garmin, they will say they like the Garmin. Because they're both good quality, but there might be one that is better for you. And that's really what I wanted to explore with my little experiment. So what I did is I did a head-to-head comparison wearing both watch during Cocodona 250 mile, during Bryce Canyon 100 mile, and in some training run. And hopefully this is unbiased information that comes from me that can help you make informed decision, because this is really the goal here, is to share the information instead of the information coming from a company that of course their product is the best, or from people that have just tried one of the two and they like it. And what I want to do is with any gear review that I will do is I'm gonna test the shit out of them. I'm gonna shred them to pieces. I'm gonna use them so much that they're totally destroyed, but I want to test it to the full extent and to see really, do I like these shoes or not? Can they sustain a 100 miler? Can they sustain a 250 miler? So rather than doing a lot, I'm gonna focus on product that I've used a lot and I can really tell you what I feel about them after many experience. Because again, I'm not a tech guy, I'm not a shoe guy, I'm a trail guy. I have experience, I run a lot, and I think that's the value that I can bring in these reviews. There won't be as much, but hopefully it's helpful information. So what about the head-to-head comparison? What did I compare? And that's the first thing I really want to emphasize. What did I actually tested? Because we shouldn't extrapolate beyond what I actually tested. And just the question, Garmin or Coros, think about it like with car. What's the bigger car, a Toyota or a Ford? And I hope that your reaction is, well, it depends on the model. And it's gonna be the same for Garmin versus Coros. They have a range of product that varies, and I didn't test all of them. And the model that I picked, well, I'm not an electronic shop, I'm not a sponsored athlete, so I'm kind of limited. But really what happened and the idea came from, I was about to race Cocodona to 50 mile, and I knew that my old Garmin Fenix 6 would not make it. So I got into the market of, let's upgrade. Let's upgrade to something that has longer battery. And that was really one of the key driver for me, was longer battery. So I looked into Coros, what would be the appropriate model for what I was doing. And they just launched the Vertix 2S. And I said, hey, I'm a famous YouTuber. So maybe they would help me out here.
Do you know who I am?
No, I can't say that I do.
I'm kind of a big deal.
Really?
People know me.
Well, I'm very happy for you.
And wow, surprise for anyone who's a long-time subscriber to my channel, finally a company says, Simon's all right. So Coros said, here you go, have the watch. I was like, nice. But that's really the only affiliation that I have with them, is they provide the watch, and it sounds really nice, and it is really nice of them, so thank you. But quite frankly, if I didn't like the watch, I would just return it and say it's game over, really. So there is a bias, and I think it's important to disclose these bias. And the only other association that I have with Coros is that I have an affiliate link. So if you want to purchase a Coros, what I kindly ask you is, well, why don't you use this link here? I'm also going to put it in the description below. In the promo code, you type Simon, and what you get in exchange, you get a free wristband. So that's cool. For me, there's a little bit that comes back to me. That's a way to support the channel indirectly. So if you think that experiment is helpful, if you think that helped you make the right decision to get a Coros, I would really appreciate if you use the link, but you really don't have to. And if you don't, I receive nothing, which is totally fine by me. As long as you get information that will help you make a good decision, it's a win. But I think it's also mimicking, hopefully, a situation that a lot of you might be in, which is you already have a watch. It's a decent watch. You're happy with the watch. Look, I was happy with my Fenix, but you're thinking I might want to upgrade. And what does that translate to? What is actually the benefit of me getting this new Vertix 2S compared to my old Garmin? Like, is it really that big of a difference, or it's a minor improvement? And that's really what I was trying to test is, sure, the Coros battery will last longer than the Garmin on this test. There's no question there. The question is, by how much? So that's a lot of blah, 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 but we gotta get down to business. And as I said, I'm not a tech guy, so I'm not here to compare the specs of the watch, but rather how I felt using that, which means that I'm really focusing on my experience with the watch and what really matters to me as a trail runner. Well, the first one that I was looking for is battery, but also navigation, ease of use, comfort, precision. Then it's gonna be things like price and also just the look overall. So battery life was really what I was looking to upgrade, and obviously I knew that the Coros would last longer, especially given the model. It's an older Garmin, it's a brand new Vertix, but what is the actual difference?
Almost 20 miles in, 99%. Whew. I think the watch will beat me. 63 hours left, at least it claims that. All right, watch wise, I'm at 98 here for the Coros and 79. Garmin is at 55. Coros is at 94. I'm at 0. After what, 92 miles and 32 hours, Coros is at 88% and Garmin 29. 37 hour and 45 minute deep, 112 mile. 85% on the Coros, 9%, and it is official. We're 125 miles in, 79% for the Coros, and the Garmin is dead.
And wow, mind blown. I didn't expect the difference to be so big. The Garmin lasting about 40 hours was exactly what I was expecting. That's been my experience with the watch so far, even though it kind of claims a little bit more. At the beginning of the movie, actually, I didn't know how to look at the percentage, and it was claiming it would last, I think, 59 hour or 69 hour, but it really didn't. So you can already see why there's a little bit of mistrust when a company says their watch will last X amount of hours. Well, there you go. There's just... It's hard to predict, of course, but there's definitely a bias towards saying it will last longer. Held up fine. I was really surprised that it was so high at midpoint in the race. Let's see a little longer.
All right, we're really deep into the race. I don't know if we can see it. Shit. Can't really see it, but battery is 55%. All right. Battery is finally down to 50% on the Coros. The record, the watch is at, 44%.
And again, wow, the watch was still at 44% after running 250 miles, after racing for 4 days nonstop with GPS. That was absolutely crazy. And because it was doing so well, what I did the week afterwards is I didn't charge it. And when I raced Bryce Canyon, which was just a week afterwards, I decided I'm gonna bring my Garmin that I fully charged, so it started at 100%, compared to the Coros that was starting at only 35%.
Garmin is at 95 and my Coros is still at 35. Right, we're like 5 hours in, maybe 24 miles, and Coros is 32. Garmin 89. Coros is 21. Garmin 69. Nice. All right, 23 hour in, 81 mile, 13%, and 52. Watch wise, we have 10% on the Coros and 36 on the Garmin. They will both make it, just like I will.
And that was, for me, absolutely crazy. It started 35%. It was more than halfway empty. It was just at 1/3 of capacity, yet it held just fine. Now, of course, am I racing 250-mile race all the time? No. So do I need a battery that is this powerful? And the answer is like, well, yes and no. There's actually a lot of value in having a battery that you know it will last the full race. You know that for your 100-miler is gonna be fine. And you also don't have to stress so much the night before to make sure it's at 100%. I was always anxious with my Garmin, always charging it the night before the race. I would turn it off so that the morning of the race I turn it on and I know it's at 100%. For me, that comes with a peace of mind that is very important, as long as everything else is good. Of course, I wouldn't take a watch that the GPS and navigation, which are the other points that we're going to compare, if it's crap, I don't really care that it lasts forever. The last thing I would say about that also is that one of the benefits of having a battery that lasts so long is that, just like your cell phone, the battery as it ages will probably mean that maybe you get 40 hours of life when you just bought the watch. But after a year or two, it's gonna degrade, and now you don't get 40 hours, you get 35, then it's 30.
And eventually you die and no one remembers you.
That is a very good point to make.
Make a right turn.
When it comes to comparing the Garmin and the Coros in terms of navigation, both watches are very good with the navigation. That's why I've always used the Garmin. Very good navigation, very good map system. Say, for example, for a race for Cocodona, I had to upload GPX file, so the course itself, in the watch. And that's something that you'll do every time that you do a different course or a different route. And I know how to do it with the Garmin, but it's not the most intuitive. With the Coros, I didn't even have time to check how to do it. I just kind of figured it out by myself. It was pretty seamless. I think it's pretty minor because when you know it, you know it. But that comes to the ease of use that I felt the Coros was a little bit better. And once it's there and once you need to navigate using your watch, one of the big difference between the two watch, I don't know if the newer model for Garmin are different, but for the model that I compared, the Garmin is not a touch screen, so you have button. And usually it's fine for almost everything except for the map. The map, it's super annoying if you're not on the trail anymore and you need to zoom out or zoom in or need to scroll to the right or scroll to the left. It's just really annoying. The Coros has a touch screen. Personally, I don't really use the touch screen when it comes to going within the menu. In fact, I deactivated it. But for the map itself, it's so practical. You can just scroll exactly where you want to go. It's much easier. It's a little bit closer to using a phone. A phone is easier to use, and if you're really lost, usually what I will do is I will actually use my phone. But when it comes to just small adjustment, it was much easier to just touch with my finger and scroll where I want to go. Comfort, Coros versus Garmin. It came with two types of bands. It came with those silicone band, and which most people are familiar with, and I've always kind of felt they're But it also comes with a nylon band, which I feel is very comfortable. I don't know how long it will last. Maybe it won't last as long. Maybe it will get dirty and all, but I really, really like the nylon band. That's the one that I use all the time. You can really adjust it to exactly what you want. And if your wrist is swelling a little bit in a race like Cocodona at 250, I mean, that kind of happened. You can loosen it a little bit, but to the exact degree that you want. For these two models, they're extremely similar in terms of the watch itself, kind of the bulky piece. It's very much the same format. If you're not used to a sport watch, it will be a little bulky and you kind of need to get used to it. So I'm used to using my Fenix. Using the Coros, that was absolutely not a problem. But the interesting thing is that I had to switch one of the watch on my non-dominant hand. So I had my Garmin on my hand that I'm not used to having a watch, and it did bruise. But it's not because the Garmin is less comfortable. It's just that this wrist was not used to that. And it was the same when I started using watch. It took maybe, I think, 3 to 6 months and a few 50-mile distance where I was bruised and it was a little bit painful the first few times. But when you use it more and more, it kind of, you don't feel it anymore. Now I never remove it. I have it in the shower, I sleep with it. It's kind of a non-issue, but if you're not used to it, I think it's important to know they're the same size. They will feel a little bulky, but you will get used to it. What about the ease of use between a Coros and a Garmin? That was the thing that I was the most worried about, and that's the thing that really, honestly, kind of prevented me from ever trying a Coros before this whole experiment. It was because I know already the system for Garmin. I know how to use the watch. I know how to use the app. And quite frankly, it took me time to be adjusted to Garmin, but now I can do anything I want in Garmin. And I think it's similar to if you compare an Android phone or an iPhone. At least for me, maybe I'm not tech savvy enough, but now that I'm used to an iPhone, it's tough for me to use an Android. But back in the days, I was using Android, and when I would try to use an iPhone, I just couldn't use it. And it's not that one interface is better than the other. It's just that I was used to one of the two. And just ahead of Cocodona, heading in there with a watch that I have never used, I was really worried, but that turned out to be a non-issue. I felt that the Coros was super intuitive for everything. As soon as you figure out kind of the three button, one is light, so that's pretty obvious. The other one is kind of pause, start, and then you have the flip to scroll. And then the other one is where you access the menu or you go backward. And as soon as you figure that out, everything is kind of seamless. So I was very surprised by how easy the watch was to use. And when it comes to the app, that's also probably a big bonus for me, is that I had just so little time to configure the watch itself, and most of the things that happen in the app, and it was pretty seamless. Whereas Garmin, I feel that there's some of the features that are kind of buried a little bit, that you need to know where they are. It might just be that the way they made the app is more how I think, but other people would prefer the other one. So maybe it's a personal preference, but personally it just went very smoothly. Let's talk about precision of the metrics. It's pretty important that your watch is accurate, but there's always a balance. So for example, you can decide on the Coros how many system of GPS tracking you will use. I think it's 2 or 5, or there's dual band. I mean, see, that's where I'm not a tech guy, but there's definitely different kind of level of precision that you can have. If you go with the highest, the battery will not last as long. If you go with lower, is it accurate enough? And from my experience, that's what I used. It was perfectly accurate. Of course, you know, will it be precise to the 0.01 mile? No. But do you need that level of precision? No. And it's going to be the same with the Garmin. It's not precise to the 0.01. With the Garmin, I have obviously more experience, and I've raced the same course several times, for example. And the difference over a 100-mile distance will be kind of a 2-mile difference. So the real difference between the two, well, it's not the satellites, it's the same satellites, the same system. It's just how the data is processed and how clear the signal is. And I think for both, you have pretty high quality. And when, for example, I'm at an aid station, and then I know that the next aid station is in 13 mile, well, with both watch in 13 mile, I'll be there. But there will be slight difference, right? Like 0.1 here, 0.1 here. And over the course of a full race, it will make a difference. But the weird thing is, well, so which one is the right one? And that's difficult to know because, well, how did they even measure the course? Is the course measurement accurate or not? We know from experience that certain races have kind of messed it up a little bit. They set a distance and then it's clear that that was wrong. There's really no point to be more accurate than the accuracy of the distance of the people that are measuring the course. I think the point here is that both watches were sufficiently accurate for that. So when it comes to precision, I don't really have a winner here. I think I would need much more experiment to actually test that. But the last drop that made me decide if I want to continue using my Coros or the Garmin, which by the way is, it's going to be the Coros, spoiler alert, is actually when I raced Bryce Canyon. As I said, there's always a level of imprecision between any watch measuring, and this was the outcome. I don't know. It's interesting to go at 99.99 when you run 100 mile. Obviously, if I had seen it, I think I would have just continued a little bit so that it's at 100 exactly. But I think it was kind of funny. No hard feeling, but it's like, oh, snap. Then the next one is probably something that I don't really care about, but maybe some people care about it. It's the look. For me, they both look really good. The Coros Vertix 2S, it's different color. I think the gray one looks pretty cool. if it were me, I would have like and I might buy one eventually, a wrist that is more colorful. I mean, I'm someone who dress with a lot of color, so I might do that, something that is yellow or orange, so that, you know, if I find one that I find cool, I might change the wrist. But they look pretty similar. They both look pretty rugged. And clearly, I mean, you have a newer watch compared to an older watch. So of course, the Coros wins on almost every aspect that I said before. But I think an important point that it's good to emphasize is the cost. And obviously, so of course, my old Garmin is cheaper than the brand new Coros. That's kind of a given. So in conclusion, what do I think, you know, with this whole experiment, Garmin Fenix 6X versus Coros Vertix 2S? Well, first, I think it's pretty clear. I'm very happy with my new watch. There's no question there. I was looking for a watch that would have longer battery, and it provided that, but in a major way. I expected it to be better. In fact, I expected it to be much better. I didn't expect to be able to run a 250 mile, spend a week, and then run 100 mile, and then still have 10%. So that really surprised me, and that was a very positive surprise. I had concern coming in that experiment. I was really concerned that the interface would be totally different, that I wouldn't be able to use it. And it turned out that it was very seamless. I didn't have an issue. And if anything, I think it was actually easier to use than the Garmin. So yeah, it's the perfect watch for me. I think if anyone is watching this and thinking about racing a 200 miler, yeah, you should really look into that watch. I think that was a great decision. So if you're racing a 200 miler, yeah, I cannot recommend enough the Coros Vertix 2S. Like, that's pretty clear to me. What if you don't race 200 mile every week, you know? Well, I still think that the added battery life is something that I will very much appreciate. Most of the time I run 100 mile, I don't run 200 mile. And most of the time when I run 100 mile, I finish under 30 hour. Still, the added benefit of having a watch that I know for sure will make it, even if it's cold, even if I use, you know, notification vibrates, I use the light, I know it will make it. Even if it was not 100%, I know it will make it. I'm not worried about that. And that's a peace of mind that is very important for me. But maybe that's not the right product for you. I think you should really look into the other ones. So I really encourage you to obviously not just listen to what I have to say about it, but go out there, watch a lot of video and get that information in, because I think it's an important decision, getting the best watch that will serve your needs. And there's no point spending too much money for the best of the best of the best if something different could be different. Even for the Coros, maybe the Apex is really what you should be looking for. A little smaller watch, maybe a little more comfortable for you. It's hard to compare every watch to every watch, but I think price is usually a consideration. And speaking of price, of course, the Vertix 2S is kind of the high end of the Coros product, but they have other product. And I would be curious to know if you think that would be interesting for me to review the other product. So the Apex, for example, that I think could be a good product for me when I race a 100 miler. And then the Pace, which I think would be great when I go and I train. If you think that could be interesting, please leave it in the comment below. Say, Simon, we want to see you review the Apex or the Pace or both of them. Because then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna bug the people at Coros so I can review it. And the more you comment that, it's providing me argument that people actually care to see what I think about these watch. If maybe, you know, maybe the Vertix is a good watch for me because I run longer distance, but maybe the Apex is the perfect watch for you, and I would want to provide that information in an unbiased way. And the best way to do that, I think, is, you know, if I get the watch to actually review them. So please leave in the comments below if you think that would be helpful. So hopefully the information I provide in this video is helpful. You know, this is my experience on trail using it. I'm not the tech guy. I don't know all of the tiny detail, but I know how a watch feels. I know how a watch can bring me to that finish line, making sure I'm able to navigate and all of these things. If you appreciate this video, please leave a thumbs up and see you next time.
Look how they massacred my boy. I don't want his mother to see him this way.
Dang.